walked out to the coroner's van with my baby and watched him like roll him into this van. And then when they pulled out, I just collapsed on the driveway. Like, just is like, I don't even know how I got up.
This is the Lost Child Podcast, where we dive into the topic of losing a child. We have a guest with us here today, Jenni, and she's going to share a little bit about her story and where she's at in her journey of healing and hope. Well, first off, Jenni, thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoy just the atmosphere that's here. I realize that we're talking about kind of heavy and deep subjects and topics, but I hope that you feel like it's a loving environment and a special environment.
It is. It's beautiful. It's definitely got a very loving feel when you walk in. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. First off, can you tell us your son's name?
His name is Declan.
Declan
Brooks Presmick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Declan. That's a beautiful name.
Thank
How did
you.
you come up with that name?
It's interesting. He was born early, emergency C-section, kind of unplanned. And I'm terrible with picking names. All my kids went like 3 days without names, but we had a few picked out, and I don't even truthfully remember what the other ones were, but I had them written on his little bassinet in the NICU.
Yeah.
And Declan was one of them. And one of the NICU nurses said, "Oh, I love that name. It means God's grace." And I was like, "Oh, perfect. That's it. That's his."
Yeah.
Because he was born a little premature. He had a condition called Cornelia de Lange syndrome. It's a very rare genetic disorder. And we didn't know he had anything wrong before he was born. But then I went in just for my 35-week checkup, and she said, "Oh, you have no amniotic fluid. Like, we are taking him right now." Still knew nothing was wrong with him. And then when he was born, we just discovered that he had this. But truly, that is like the smallest part of his story. He was amazing. He had the best personality. Just, you couldn't go anywhere without someone falling in love with him. He was the best part of me.
What's one of your favorite memories that you have with Declan?
Oh my gosh, that is the hardest question, because there isn't a favorite. Like, every moment spent with him was better than the last one. Like, he was just I love all my kids. And anyone who met him would tell you there's something special. Like, I think my favorite, if I have to pick, he was nonverbal. And from the moment he was born, when they told me he could potentially not be able to speak, I was just always so worried that, like, how am I going to know that he knows I love him? Like, will he ever be able to tell me I love you? And about 2 weeks before he passed, we had been working on sign language his whole life, but he gave me the little "I love you" sign in
And
the
how
crib.
old was he?
He was 5.
5.
Yeah. So that was, obviously I was extremely excited when that happened, but then when I lost him, I was just kind of reminiscing on it, and I thought that was truly a gift to get that. And so having that moment with him just in his crib, and knowing, like, I think it truly has helped me, like, going through all of this, knowing that, like, I got that little sign that he did love me and he knew I loved him.
Did he give pretty good hugs too?
Amazing. Yeah, he was the best
That would
cuddler.
just be like when you said how would I know that he loved me? I was like, man, hugs would seem like a big thing. So I'm glad that he was a good hugger.
Yes. I mean, he definitely was a cuddler, and it's just one of those things, like, obviously I knew he loved me and I knew he felt loved, but your mom heart, you just want to hear it. You want to know, you just want to know with certainty. And that was it for me. There was an experience after his death too, that I don't know if we can talk about it or not talk about it. It's up to you.
If you want to share it on
totally
here,
up
you
to
can
you.
totally share it on here. If you don't want to talk about it on here, or you want to talk about it with just us,
No,
then we
I'm
can do that
happy.
too. But if it's,
I feel like I'm at the point where I'll talk about anything. Like, it's taken a long time to get to that point. And this story in particular is one that, like, I've truly only shared with my family and I think one friend, because I know with my heart that it was like a sign from Heavenly Father. I know, but I just worry about other people, the naysayers and negative people. I don't want anyone to ever try and, like, take away from it. But
they're going to say what they're going to say.
yeah. And
right?
I feel like I'm
and
at
it's
that
always
point.
more of a reflection on them. And I don't know if you felt this too. I felt almost like a level of authenticity that I'd never felt before in my life, that I was kind of like, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm going to say what I think.
That is the best way I've heard someone describe it, truthfully. Like all the stuff that you used to care about or used to matter from, I mean, I can remember getting ready one morning and looking in the mirror like, oh, does this outfit look good? And then going, who cares? Like, why does it matter if this outfit looks good? Like, that's the least, like, that's, why would anyone care about that?
Yeah,
That's, important. It doesn't matter at all. Like, yes, all the little things you could care less what other people think. But with this, it's more like, I don't want someone to take away from the meaning. So like, after I lost him, it was 2 days after the funeral. And I mean, as a mess, like, inconsolable, a mess. And I remember going to visit his gravesite, and the flowers from his casket were there and they were starting to wilt, and I lost it because I was like, okay, this is a sign that like time is passing, and time is not passing for me. Like I'm in that moment still, you know? And I just was laying there, and every time I went to the grave, I would pick up around the grave first and make sure everything was clean. I had brought little scissors and I trimmed the grass around. And so it was spotless. There was nothing around. And, I was just laying there, and I was in nursing school at the time. So I like had my, study stuff, and didn't study, but I, had high hopes that I would. And I was just laying there, and I just started like, truthfully, just yelling at God. I was just like, there's a lot of things you could say about me, a lot of things I've messed up in my life, but I was a good mom. Like I was a great mom to this kid. And I need you. Like I have to get a sign that he's okay.
Yeah.
That he knows that I loved him, that he loves me, that he's okay. Like if you want me to continue, I need something. Like, I don't care. And I was being so dumb. I was like, let a bird land on my knee. Let like a butterfly, like land on my, like something, just give me a sign that you hear me and that he's okay. And I was just laying there crying, screaming, angry.
Yeah.
Very angry. Like Heavenly Father and I had a very tough relationship for a long time. And I think I laid there for an hour and nothing. And I was just so defeated. I was just like, so what do I do? What do I do at this point? I have to go home and raise 2 other kids. I'm a single mom. Like I can't keep doing it. And then finally I just, in anger, was getting ready to leave. And I looked down, and I told you, I cleaned the grave. Like this was not there when I got there. And it still has the dirt on it from when I found it. But it found this little broken piece of it looks like a mug to me.
Yeah.
But like I was literally begging him, tell me that he loves me, tell me that he's safe, tell me he knows I love him. And I don't know if you can see it, but it says, I love you today, tomorrow, and forever. You can still see the dirt. It was like if you were looking, it was like buried in the dirt, just like that, with just that like sticking up. And I cherish this more than anything I own, because like you can't tell me this was not some sign from Heavenly Father letting you know.
It's not some random thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, look at how it's broken.
It's exactly what you needed to see.
It's like the exact words I need to see. I love you today, tomorrow, and forever. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't really know what the question was, but
that's fine.
But yeah, that was like the little moment for me where I was just kind of like not okay by any means, but like
it helped you get through
to the next day.
Yeah, exactly. To the next day.
Which was another struggle. They are.
Yeah.
So what were some of Declan's favorite things to do? Like activities and stuff?
He was a quirky one. So he loved spinning. He loved anything that spun, or he loved to spin himself. So he had like those little things you sit on, and he would land it like Superman and spin around.
Yeah, like a turntable thing or whatever it is, like you sit on, like sit and spin.
Yeah.
They call it sit and spin.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got it for him, people are like, he's not going to be able to use that, because he had one arm that wasn't fully functional. He was missing a couple fingers. And I gave that to him, and that kid figured it out in half a second. It was so fun to watch him. And then he loved balancing things. He was very mischievous. But he could do no wrong, truthfully. He laughed. He had the most contagious laugh. He loved spinning things. He loved Mickey Mouse. I think it was like the contrast of colors or something, but he was obsessed with anything Mickey. He loved his little dinosaur. So this little guy has become our little like.
That's from Toy Story, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. It's our little surrogate. He goes everywhere with us. My dog got him, so
Uh-oh.
the dog was in a lot of trouble. But
yeah.
yes, so he's gone on all our adventures since with us and stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
he was just a lot of fun. I mean, my family adored him. He adored them. Like I said, he couldn't talk, but there's not a person that didn't know that they were truly loved by him.
You said he had a great personality. What if you were to like explain or describe his personality? How would you do that?
The first word would definitely be mischievous and like intentional. Everything he did was very
With purpose.
Exactly. There was no just like messing around, whether it was like sorting his toys. Like one time we were in the hospital and he had all these little, like the little people figurines.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And I was like sitting there doing homework and I look up and he balanced them all on the edge of the crib, just like by size kind of. And I was just like, that is so cute. So then I just started giving him random things to see what he would balance. And we were giving him empty syringes and just any little random thing we could find. And he was just like building towers with it. And he just like building was definitely something he enjoyed. And the way that he did it made zero sense to me or anyone else looking, but he had it down. He could go so high and you would look at it and go, there's no way he can add another one. And sure enough, he would add another one. Yeah, he had a little yellow lid that still sits in my drawer. It was from just a bottle from when he was a baby, but it was a yellow lid from the breast milk bottles. And he was obsessed with that thing. He would stick it on his finger. He took it in the car. You know, it was like that big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just had it everywhere with him. He hated wearing shoes. So we'd go to preschool and we couldn't make it from the car to preschool with his shoes on in his stroller. And one time I picked him up and they had tried like taping the shoes around with like a light duct tape because they're like, we were going outside and it was hot and he would not keep his shoes on. And I'm like, I have nothing for you. We've tried high tops. We've tried double knots. Like he will not keep a shoe. And it's so funny. I love that you have Sunny shoes over here because I don't know what it is about shoes, but they're just full of like memories and meanings. And I have all of his shoes.
Yeah.
I even have my favorite shoe is one shoe. It's a one little Chuck Taylor Converse because we lost the other one when he wouldn't keep it out one time. So it was probably lost at the zoo and I have the one and I love it. It's in my closet and I see it when I get dressed every day. And his dad kept some of his shoes too. And just something like you can picture what they were doing when they were wearing those shoes and picture kind of like the adventure you took and whatever it is, every little thing about them. Like I love looking around here and seeing like her dress. I can imagine you probably had her dress up in that, or she had a ballet performance or something.
That,
and you
one's
have
special to us because we bought 2 dresses, the exact same, and that's the dress that she was buried in.
I love that.
And the reason why we have that dress specifically is 2 weeks before her accident, she had come to me and she had asked, this was in July. Her birthday is in February.
You know, kids
and
are.
I assume
telling
you have
people.
kids also, and they do this, and they always want to keep you updated on what they want for their birthday.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's important.
So she came to me in July, 2 weeks before her death, and she said, Dad, I know what I want for my birthday. And it's like July, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let me know. And she said, I want a bubblegum machine and I want a dress without sleeves. And I was like, okay, those are interesting requests. And so that dress, it's a spaghetti strap dress, and we actually cut the spaghetti straps off. So when we buried her, she did have
A sleeveless
dress.
dress.
Oh my goodness.
Or a dress without sleeves. And then we had a huge bubblegum ball machine, like you would see it
At
like
the
an
funeral.
arcade.
It's in our house
And we
now.
now have it
Yeah.
over by our piano in our house.
I love that.
We were going to try to have it in this room. It just seemed
It didn't fit. It's
Yeah.
too big.
That's
So
so fun.
that's why, there are lots of special things in this room. And like even in there, we have
Yeah, she has more of her
bunch
things in
more
there.
stuff. We have
Like all of her
artwork
coloring and stuff, in there.
in here.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Can you tell us, and it's Declan, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how Declan died?
Yes, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast today, but I could tell you every single detail of that day. It was Christmas Eve. My older son had been not feeling that great, so I took him to urgent care, and they swabbed him, and he had strep throat. And while we were there, I just said, Declan's not complaining, but can you just swab him anyway, just in case he's got it, so we can start him on something? And they did, and he did have strep. He hadn't complained one single bit, but he did have a pretty high pain tolerance. I mean, the kid had been through 13 surgeries, and like he had, and he couldn't talk. So, but I always knew when he didn't feel good. Like I just knew, but he was truly acting fine. So I just had him swab him, and so of course they started him on antibiotics as well as Easton, and then we went home, and I was living with my sister at the time. So I had just gotten divorced not even a year earlier, and I was in nursing school. And so my brother-in-law insisted, he's like, you can't keep doing this on your own. You
have
guys
a lot of stuff then right there.
Yeah.
So you were nursing school.
Divorced.
And you had recently been divorced.
Yes.
How many kids did you have at that time?
3,
So you had 3 kids all under the age of?
11.
Okay. So
Yeah.
3 kids living kind of on your own, but then you moved in with your sister-in-law or sister?
My sister. So my brother-in-law, I was renting a house, and I was struggling because
that's
like
a lot.
I was getting no help, and it was a really rough time. And he was like, Jenni, you can't do this on your own. And I'm very stubborn, but it really did reach a point where he just didn't give me a choice. He said, you guys are moving in with us. You can't do this on your own anymore. And so he was so sweet. He converted their little media room into a big bedroom for us, put a closet in. So me and the 3 kids lived in this room while I went through nursing school. And so Christmas, we go back to my sister's house, our house, and, you know, we're doing all the Christmas Eve preparations. And I remember, it's stupid, I remember I was making a blueberry French toast casserole so we could, you know, wake up and have breakfast ready. It was this recipe I found, and I was so excited for it. So I made that and put it in the freezer. And then he just started acting like kind of lethargic. But at this point, I knew he had strep throat. I knew he was like probably going to not feel that great. So we just laid on this little chair and cuddled. And it was really hard for me in the moment to not worry about all the stuff that I had going on. It's Christmas Eve. You have a million things to do.
Yeah, of course.
But for some reason, I just kind of thought, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I don't care. I'm just going to cuddle with him. And
That's
I laid
a
on.
wonderful blessing.
Yeah,
that in that
definitely.
moment you had that. Right?
Yes.
Versus the converse, which would have been, I'm going
Regret.
to ignore him and I'm going to do all the Christmassy stuff.
I could have never lived with it, truthfully. So I laid on, like, my brother-in-law has this huge recliner, and we just laid there in this like fluffy turquoise blanket. And I don't know if I took the picture or if someone else did, but I have this little picture of like him. All you can see is like his eyes peeking out, and I'm like kind of looking up. So I think someone else took it. Don't remember that detail.
Yeah.
But like you see his little eyes, and he's just kind of sleeping, but doesn't look like he feels great. And I'm just cuddling with him, and I love it because it's the last picture I have of
you
the
two
two of
together.
us together. And then he took a nap, and once he was comfy in my arms, I put him in the playpen in the kitchen while we were still kind of prepping stuff. Day proceeded like normal. It was bedtime. The other kids were asleep. I was just up wrapping presents, and he wasn't sleeping. He was fussy. Like he was definitely fussy, but didn't have a fever, didn't have like anything that would make, we're nurses. Like I was in nursing school at the time, but he didn't have anything. And then he started getting fussier, and gave him Tylenol. And I called the ER because I was like, I'll just double check. Like, is there something else I should be doing? And he had a feeding tube, so I was able to give him Pedialyte and fluids and stuff. And they're like, all we're going to do is give him fluids and antibiotics. He's on that. Like, if you feel like, obviously they say if you want to come in, but I had zero promptings like that I should take him in. And that's something I struggled with, but I've reconciled it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But with my kids, especially with him, I always knew what to do. Like I always knew instantly if something was wrong and I needed to take him to the hospital, or if it was nothing. And it was always correct. Like the doctor would say, he's fine. I'm like, no, he's not fine. And he would have like an intestinal blockage. Like I knew my kid, you know what I mean? So I was just praying. I'm like, if I need to take him, if I need to do something, just tell me, I'll do whatever. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve. Like we canceled a whole Disneyland trip to take him to the doctor one time. So I don't care. I will take him if that's what needs to happen. And I just knew I didn't need to take him. And I was like, I am out of Pedialyte. So I woke my daughter up and I was like, can you just sit with him for a minute? And I'm going to run up to Walgreens. And of course the one by me was closed. So I had to go to the 24-hour one. So I was gone about 30 minutes, and then I got back and gave him a little Pedialyte, cuddled with him, and he settled down. And we cuddled for a little bit. I kept wrapping presents until he fell asleep on the bed with me. And then I took him over to his crib and laid him down, and he rolled over, and he liked to sleep with his knees under him and his little booty in the air.
Yeah.
So he rolled over like that, and I put his little stuffed animal next to him and tucked him in with his little Mickey Mouse blanket. And he just like passed away, or he just fell asleep peacefully. And this was about 4 a.m.
Oh,
He had finally kind of calmed down. And I think I fell asleep pretty much right after that. He didn't cry anymore, nothing. He was just very peaceful. He kind of fell asleep like laying next to me. And then in the morning, it was my ex-husband's turn to have them for Christmas. So he called me about 8 and he said, "Can I come get them? Are they ready?" And I said, Declan had a really rough night. So if we could maybe push it to noon or something so he can sleep a little bit more. And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I was getting ready. So his crib was here, my bed was here. And then I had like a little vanity set up across from his crib. Like I said, my whole house was in one room at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the best moment of my life altogether, but I'm just getting ready. And all of a sudden I was just kind of like he's not even like stirring.
Yeah.
And so I went over just to check on him. And as soon as I looked in the crib, he was in the exact same position that I'd put him in, like hadn't moved a muscle.
With his knees underneath him.
Tucked in. And I just instantly, like my heart sank. And I, reached down, touched him, shook him. He didn't move. Threw the blanket off and just grabbed him by his pajamas. Just grabbed him, pulled him up. And I mean, this is probably, but he came up like rather stiff.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I threw him on the bed, started doing like sternal, everything, like trying to get him to respond, and nothing. So I ran in to my brother-in-law and sister's room. They were right across the hall. And it's so vivid. Like when you experience trauma, you can feel everything that happened in that moment. So I just screamed.
It seems like time, time almost didn't exist in that moment for me at least. Like, because it's almost like every second seems like a minute.
Yes. It is absolutely slow motion. You can hear everyone breathe. You can hear your blood moving through your vein, everything. But I went in the room and I just said, "Cliff, I can't wake him up." And I just remember him jumping out of bed going, "No." This is like the most calm man you've ever met. And he just said, "No." And I said, "I can't wake him up." And he called 911, and I had Declan on the floor by their bed, and I'm like shaking him and just doing everything I can. And he's on 911 and he's like, "Have you given him CPR?" And I'm like, "I'm trying." And so I'm giving him CPR. I'm feeling his ribs break. And
oh my gosh.
It's so weird. I don't cry sometimes and I do cry others. So we never know what we're going to get with me. Like, it's just very odd. But yeah, I'm feeling his ribs break underneath me, under my hands. And I told Cliff, I said, "He's gone." And he said, "Keep giving him CPR." They said, "Keep giving him CPR." And I said, "He's gone." And he said, "Keep giving it to him." So I kept giving him CPR. And it felt like it was 5 hours. But it also felt like it was 5 seconds. And it was the longest, shortest moment of my life. And then their house is 3 stories. So it's like a little lower story with 6 stairs. And then the upstairs is a pretty long staircase. And I can still hear everything. Like I can feel the vibration on the ground of the firefighters and EMT running up the stairs. And one of the firemen grabbed me and pulled me off of him. And I was physically fighting him because I'm like, "No, I have to keep giving him CPR." And he's pulling me. He's got one arm. He's grabbed the other arm. He's almost wrapped me in a body hug of some sort. Yeah. And I was like, "No, I have to give him CPR." And he's like, we got it. So I truly don't know if they resumed CPR. They hooked him up relatively quickly to the AED. And I still remember Sorry, just a second.
Don't be sorry.
He just said no shockable rhythm. And I knew it already. I did. But he said it, and I just lost it. Oh. And then I'm just sitting there on the floor with my baby like right next to me. And it just was so chaotic. It felt like there was 100 people in the room. And there was so many firemen, EMTs. At that point, everybody kept showing up. Like a coroner showed up and investigators showed up. And when I tell you the next 4 hours were the most insulting, terrible, humiliating, gut-wrenching moments of my life, that's not an exaggeration. So in hindsight, I've learned to love and appreciate and accept that the people that were there were doing their job.
Yeah.
And they were protecting my baby. They didn't know me. But in the moment, I was treated like I had potentially hurt my child.
Yeah.
I adored that little boy more than anything or anyone could ever adore anybody. I would have given every drop of my blood, every bit of myself to make him happy and keep him okay. There was a gentleman there, a big, buff, burly guy, and he had these stupid sunglasses on his head. He was bald and he wore his sunglasses on his forehead. His only job was to watch me and make sure I didn't touch my son. And I had so much hatred for this man that I don't even know his name.
Yeah. For
so long. I'm like, how can you sit there and act like I did something to my son? And I was like, so stupid. I said, can I please just put him in his Christmas pajamas? And they were like, no, you can't do anything. And they interviewed everybody, I swear, everybody that was in the room, everybody on my street, everybody to ask what kind of mom I was. And my ex-husband and my brother-in-law and my dad told me afterwards that they had said, would she ever hurt him? And they all, they're like, we told him, you would do anything for that kid. They obviously all just kind of said great things. And so they had to examine him and they wouldn't let me go in the room to do that. And I begged them, I'm like, can you please let somebody come in? Let somebody. And so they ended up letting my dad go in while they examined him, obviously for trauma or who knows, whatever. And it was probably relatively quickly, but like I said, it felt like forever. But they determined, obviously I had done nothing wrong, and we opted not to do an autopsy, but the general consensus was that it was something related to the strep throat, whether it had been he'd had it longer than we knew, or his little body, he was immunocompromised on some level too. So maybe that, but thankfully they didn't insist on one, and I didn't want to put him through that.
Yeah.
But once they determined that I hadn't there was no foul play, I guess you could say, they let me have him back. And I just laid there with him on this little couch, and my sister, she had this yellow couch, kind of like this color. And I just laid there with him in that same turquoise blanket and his Mickey Mouse blanket. Everybody showed up. My neighbors showed up, my family, my bishop, everybody was there. And
did you like having the people come over? Well, first off, for anything, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that whole thing. And essentially you found Declan dead by yourself. Mm-hmm. That's awful. So
yeah.
I'm sorry you had to experience or feel any of that.
Thank you.
given that there was all these people that came over afterwards. Well, one other thing I wanted to say is we do kind of live in a sad world where some people do bad things to their kids,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? And so,
Like I said, in hindsight, I appreciate him.
yeah.
It just took me a while to
But
get
in the
there.
moment,
Yeah, in the moment,
you
exactly.
don't ever want to be accused of doing something like to your kids. Essentially the same thing happened to us.
Yeah.
They let us see Sonny for about 3 minutes is what we got. And then they were like, you in a room here, and I'm going to interrogate, and you go over here, and you can't be together. They had to separate Camille and I and start getting our stories to understand. And I'm in the middle of like, we just saw our dead daughter.
Yeah, we're in shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have other kids, and I have two
Yeah.
other children and my nephews, and I have other people, and my kids are like, what's going on, Mom? And you're trying to navigate all this, and you've literally just experienced the worst thing a human being can
yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
and it's being compounded,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you've accepted it or not or found forgiveness for that, but it did take me quite a while to realize that while I didn't appreciate it in the moment and I didn't deserve it, he didn't know me, and he was watching out for my child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've learned to accept him and love him for that, but it was a long time coming.
Yeah.
Because it's not, you mean,
And it's not something that honestly you ever think about until you experience it.
yeah.
Where it's like you just think of the grief of losing a child. You don't think of how all of the other things go on and have a coroner come over, fire department, paramedics, police were going to be there too, right?
Oh, yeah,
It
police.
essentially becomes a crime scene
It
when
was.
someone dies. And so then there's other things that have to take place that you never think of. And you're in the midst of all of this grief and have to still like
Yeah.
comply and do some of these things.
Yeah. And if comply is a good word, because I mean, I was angry and they knew I was angry because I was like, let me have, I want my baby. I want my baby. Like I was that person, and I don't take responsibility for it. Even I was a wreck. I was going through trauma, and I wanted my child, and they probably thought I was crazy, but I just wanted my baby. And then my dad calmed me down, and he's like, said kind of the things that you were saying. And I was able to calm down long enough for them to do what they needed to. And I'm just so thankful that it resolved relatively quickly to the point that it didn't go into like an ongoing thing.
Investigation. Yeah.
Because I couldn't have handled it. Like I felt horrible enough that someone thought that of me for an hour or two. If it had gone on longer, I couldn't have.
Ours had to go into like a full-on investigation.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
They held stuff in as evidence, like because it was all a boating accident. So her life jacket they had for like 2 months or something, and yeah, they needed. It wasn't like a quick like, oh yeah, that was an accident. No, it was like a continual thing. Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I mean, they did take a few of his things, I think, in case there was an investigation, and it took me about 6 months to get his little Mickey blanket back. And that was just that. I can't even imagine if you guys had to go through what you did. I'm so sorry. My heart breaks for you.
Thank you. You had talked about how like you started having neighbors come over, tons of people come over. You were kind of just there holding him. What did you think about all these people coming? Was that a comfort to you? Did it annoy you? Like
I thought nothing of it.
Okay.
All I cared about was holding him, and if anyone tried to get in the way of that, then that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
But I think everybody just kind of like, and I've always had that like very supportive family, like everybody, aunts, uncles, cousins, like supportive church group. Like I'm just used to having people show up when they need to show up. And so it was expected. I don't remember who was there. I know my Aunt Susie was. I know my mom, my dad, my ex-husband.
did that complicate things any all? Maybe I'm
So much.
insensitive in asking that
No.
question, but like it seemed like you were somewhat newly divorced, and that was Declan's dad. Yes, and so How did that kind of play out too? Because then he would have come over and like.
It was not an ideal situation.
Okay.
It was very hard because it was relatively fresh. I didn't call him. My brother-in-law called him. I think he just called him and said something was going on. He didn't tell him what happened because he was up north, I think near Flagstaff when it happened.
Yeah.
So obviously he didn't want him to like drive unsafe to get down there. And so it wasn't until he arrived that he found out. I don't remember him showing up. I don't know at what point he did.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd, I have a lot of resentment towards him because, and he knows this, we've talked about it, but I had to experience the things that he didn't have to experience. Like
Yeah.
he lost a child, and I 100% empathize with that, but I lost a child in a different way. I have a lot of trauma associated with it. Like he showed up in the aftermath. Like it was
Yeah.
calm down. I mean, there was still people talking, investigating, things like that, and I'm not mad at him now. It just took me a long time to not have that resentment. Like, why did I have to go through this and you didn't? And I was very, like, I didn't want to be married to him anymore, but I was also just like, I had, you run everything through your head. I'm like, if we'd still been together, would something have been different? Would I have taken him to the ER? I know I wouldn't have. And the answer that I have is that he hated hospitals. If I'd taken him to a hospital, he would have been hooked up to who knows what, gotten shots, and it would have been the same result.
Yeah.
He potentially would have died in a hospital.
I know it was his time to go. I know. I don't agree with it and I don't like it, but
Yeah.
I just know and have had enough confirmation that he was supposed to pass away peacefully next to me. But the way that the discovery and the next day went, like, it just wasn't fair that I did that alone.
Yeah.
And we already had our issues. We're fine now. It was just, and we do still sometimes, like, he'll say something. I don't even have an example, but he'll say something, and in my head, I'll just be like, no, that's not how it went. No, you didn't experience the same thing I did. You don't feel the pounding in your chest that you felt when they were running up the stairs.
Yeah.
You don't remember being pulled off. There was a paramedic.
Do you remember the sirens? Like the sound of the
I don't
sirens
ever think I heard a
coming,
siren.
or like a door opening in the specific way.
I remember
things
the
like
door
that.
opening because they had a big screen door, and I remember hearing the screen door slam.
Yeah.
And then immediately after the slam, I felt the rumble of people running up the stairs. And when it was like, after I told you they said no shock will rhythm, I remember just like hanging on to this fireman's leg. I don't know how I got a hold of his leg, but I was just like sobbing and hanging onto his leg. And I was like, don't leave me. That's all I said to him. I mean, I don't know this person, but I just said, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. And he sat there with me for, I don't even know how long until, but yeah. So I guess maybe as I'm talking through this now, like, I didn't have someone else to cling to right then. My sister was taking care of my kids. My brother-in-law was being interviewed, and I didn't have a partner there. And for some reason, I just clung to whoever this person was next to me. And I mean, that's not fair.
I would dare say it was probably the loneliest you've ever felt in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Lonely is a good word.
That's something horrible to go through. Lonely.
Yeah. And it's weird because it was lonely, but I did have a million people around, but I definitely felt alone 100%. Like, nobody in this, not a single person here knows how I feel right now.
Exactly.
They all feel awful and feel a lot of different things, but nobody feels the pain, the despair, like, I didn't want to do anything. I could have cared less. When I tell you, if I had died right there, I would not have been upset. I wished for a long time that I would have just died at that moment too. And if I didn't have 2 other kids, I can promise you I never would have gotten out of bed again. Like, what would have been the point? Like, in that moment, I had nothing that, aside from my other 2 kids needing me, that would have made me want to be alive anymore. Which sounds gruesome and sounds terrible and gloomy, but
I don't think it
how you
does.
felt,
That's how
though,
lots of people
right?
feel afterwards.
the pain was it wasn't even pain. I can't even describe the feeling.
Just feeling kind of numb or
Numb and pain and like sick. I can't even tell you how many times I threw up. Like, and I just remember after, at some point, hours and hours later, after I was cuddling with him, again, this is too much information, but it sucked for me and it sucks and makes people uncomfortable. But I can remember holding him in his blanket, laying there on the couch with him and looking down at him, and his eyes, like, they were slightly open. They were closed, but they were slightly open. And I just remember them changing color.
Oh, wow.
And knowing like, oh my gosh, I can't keep holding him. Like, I have to let him go now. Like, his body was changing. Does that
You didn't want to remember him in a bad way, like his body.
Yeah. And so then I just kind of said, okay, it's
time.
It's time. And then the coroner took him, and like I walked out to the coroner's van with my baby and watched him like roll him into this van. And then when they pulled out, I just collapsed on the driveway. Like, just is like, I don't even know how I got up.
So sorry.
Just like, I remember there was a car there, and I just like, my back hit it, and I slouched down and just laid there. And I remember everybody standing around, and nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what to say. And I just sat there for hours. And it's still Christmas morning. I have kids. My nieces and nephews are there. Like, all these children that don't understand what's going on still want to celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
So at some point I get up and I go take a shower. And it was so weird because it was so soon after, but this was the first time I had a full panic attack. I can't even believe that you can have a panic attack that short afterwards, but I was in the shower and I felt it all again. I felt the rumble of the stairs. I felt the guy pull me off. I felt it. It was real time. It was happening again in the shower, and I'm crying. And I get out of the shower and I have to go downstairs and watch kids open presents because that's what they needed. I didn't want to ruin this holiday for them forever.
Yeah.
So I sat there and opened presents, and my baby's Christmas presents are sitting here unopened.
Oh my gosh.
Like, how is that something anyone should ever have to?
In that moment, were you pretty numb to kind of everything? And so you're just able to go through the motions? That was something that we experienced. We just kind of became numb. You didn't feel good. You didn't feel bad. You were just kind of like sensory overload, and your body just went like.
Yep.
Kind of shuts down, but still kind of able to do little
You're able
things.
to like walk,
yeah.
right? You're able to like do those things, but it's just bland.
You're on autopilot. You're not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're not in control
there.
of anything that's happening.
Yeah.
I looked back at pictures a couple years ago that someone took of that morning, like while the kids were opening presents, and there's a picture of me on the couch, and I looked at that picture and I go, that person is like, that's not you. Like, I was just sitting there staring, like distant, like I was not there. And I was holding, I think my daughter gave me a bracelet or something because I had opened it and I was holding it, and just kind of like my eyes were huge and puffy and red. My face was swollen. And I just looked at that and I thought, how did you do that? Like, how, but it was complete numb, complete autopilot, complete, like, I wasn't doing anything. I was just going through the motions. I didn't eat. I lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
In a couple weeks, probably. I couldn't eat.
Wow.
I couldn't eat without getting sick. I couldn't do anything. It was just.
How did you cope with it, and like your kids cope with everything, like for like right afterwards?
I don't know. I mean, I left my sister's house because I couldn't be there. So I went to stay with my mom and dad.
Yeah.
With my kids.
And your kids came with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we stayed at their house every day. I tried to go back home and I couldn't. Every day I would pack my stuff and be like, okay, today's the day we're going to go. I think we were there for 3 weeks before I could make myself
like go back to the room.
But I also needed help because I also had school because it was Christmas. And so I had till January 6th when I had
and then
to
you had to go back.
School.
Did you go back then?
Straight
I
back
had
to
to.
school?
Yeah, I didn't want to, but I asked them and they were like, we can give you 1 day
One day?
Because the day that we were doing his funeral was the first day of school. And so they gave me that day.
They couldn't like let you take off a semester or whatever?
I would lose my seat. You know, nursing school.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
I know. And I don't know how I got through it, to be like, God, good friends. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember the last year of nursing school one single bit. But yeah, we stayed at my mom's and dad's. And I mean, they just took care of me. I don't remember doing anything for my kids. They were fed. We had community come in and, you know, people were bringing us meals. And I had friends show up at my parents' house. I swear every day someone showed up with a meal or a treat or a placard or a ceramic. Like somebody was always there. And it was great. And that was...
You liked that?
I did.
Okay.
I didn't in the moment.
Yeah.
Because
But
I didn't
after-
care
Yeah.
about anything they were bringing me. I just wanted my baby.
Yeah.
But after I looked back on it, I was very grateful to know that people cared that much.
Yeah. Did people try to talk to you? Did you want to talk to people in that
Nobody
moment? Or were
wanted
you
to
just
talk
kind of
to-
like,
Yeah, nobody knew what to say.
okay. And did you find anything comforting that people did say?
When people would just say it. When
What would
people
they say?
They would say, they would acknowledge that he died. They would acknowledge that it happened. They wouldn't skirt around they wouldn't just pretend like I had just like broken an ankle and was getting a meal. They would acknowledge the fact that like I was going through the worst thing a human being could possibly go through and that I wasn't expected. Here's a good one. The people that didn't expect you to feel any way. Like if I felt, it took a while, but if I had a happy day, great. If I had a sad day, great. Like don't expect me to feel one way or the other.
Yeah.
There was a moment where it was January. So it was literally less than a month after I had lost him. And I had some friends that were going to Bryan Head to go skiing.
Yeah.
And my friend Aubrey invited me. And I just was like, sure. And then after I said yes, I was like, wait a minute.
Why
How am
did
I
say yes?
Like, what? Yeah.
what am I thinking? Like, I can't do this. And then my mom was like, just go. Like, they're your friends. Like, if it's not great, it's not great. They'll bring you home. And I went and I got a message on Facebook from somebody after the fact
Oh
because
my
Aubrey had
gosh.
posted like a picture of us.
Yeah.
And I got a message from someone that said like, how can you
do that?
How can you go do something like that after you just lost your son? And I was so mad.
Oh,
I would be super pissed too.
Yeah.
I was like
so mad.
livid. I didn't even have words. And so when I finally responded back, I don't know exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, here's the two options I have. Figure out a way to keep living or don't.
Yeah.
And I have to choose to keep living. And so that's what I'm doing. And I never talked to this person. I was so angry.
This
Yeah,
is
that's
This is
awful.
this exact thing like played in my head multiple times because it was like a news station setup, right? Where it's like you see somebody that had just lost somebody, and then you have all these news reporters, and it has like a video of this person. And in this case, it could be you, like going and doing something, and everyone just says, "How could they do that when they just lost?" Their
So-and-so,
husband, when they
yeah.
just lost their kid. And it could be
Yes.
doing anything. It could be walking in flowers. It could be going snow skiing. It could be going to the lake. It could be going parachuting, whatever it is, right? And I would have that vision in my head of a news station doing like a bit on me or whatever and being like, how could you do that?
But at the same time, and then there's the people that are like, you have to move on and blah, blah, blah. So either way, whatever you
You're not
choose to
gonna
do,
win.
you're going to make somebody upset, which is like,
Yeah.
why are you getting mad at me for my loss?
I know.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry that you had to even have that
crazy.
message.
People say
and-
stupid
I know.
stuff.
And what they didn't see is when we were up there, yes, I went sledding and had a good time, but I also cried myself to sleep every night
Yeah.
alone
Yeah.
because I didn't want to wake anyone else. Like
or there
sobbing
might have
into
been
my
times where you
pillow
were
or-
like actually on the mountain and you're like bawling tears.
absolutely there was.
Like I could totally see that going down and you're just like, at this moment, this is great, but I'm still just bawling my eyes out.
Yeah. Or, there were people I hadn't met before. And the question of how many kids do you have came up. And I was like, 3. And then they asked their ages. And then I start bawling. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't by any means like a wonderful experience. It was something
Yeah.
I agreed to do and I don't regret doing it. But like, how dare you judge somebody or even give your opinion on something that thank goodness you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
Exactly.
And did you ever think beforehand but like when you started having kids, or even maybe before you had kids, that you would ever lose a child? Like, did you ever have a thought or premonition or anything?
Nothing. I mean, the only thing I have, I remember in junior high being in like a science class, and I was just like envisioning my life for some reason. And I envisioned like having kids and not having all of them when I had grandkids.
Yeah. Okay.
Which was kind of, it didn't really mean anything to me at the time. And I honestly, till you just said that, I haven't really thought of that.
Okay.
But
to bring that kind of full circle of what we were talking about, of like how you went skiing after the accident, is there's been thoughts I've had of how I would act if I was in like something like this.
mm-hmm.
And I've acted so much different than I thought I would have done. Right. There was definitely, I would say that I was like, man, I would be a complete mess and I wouldn't be able to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. Like, I'm able to go do some stuff. You were able to go snow skiing. So the reason why I say that is that person that sent that message, sometimes you think of, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And I would just be so,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really know.
Yeah. You don't know.
Until you're in that spot, how you would actually react.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thankfully, and I think any normal person would look and say, if that happened to me, I would never be able to do anything again, because that's how you feel. But then it happens, and guess what? You have to.
Yeah.
You
have
you
to
don't
go
have a
on.
choice. I mean, like I said, the alternative is to die.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a choice. You have to do something.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have 2 other kids you have to take care of.
Yeah.
So-
And they deserve a mom who's not depressed and not like never gets out of bed again and makes them lose their childhood too. They deserve a good childhood. They've obviously experienced incredible trauma that they've still had to deal with. They're still
yeah.
dealing with this to this day.
Of course.
But they deserve a mom who's going to do the best that she can to help them have a good life.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to. And I don't care if you like the way I do it or not. I mean, I did care at one point, but now there's no right way to do this.
No.
There's no right way to grieve. There's no right or wrong way to move forward, because it's unacceptable. It's unimaginable. It's not the way it's supposed to be. There's nothing right or wrong about how you choose to do it. And I would say that to anybody that unfortunately experiences this. Like, you have to do, as long as it's healthy and it's not, you're not like pouring yourself into drugs and alcohol to deal with the pain. Like, whatever you have to do to cope that's not detrimental to your
I would say.
health or the health and well-being of others, like, you can do it.
I would
Yeah,
definitely
I
say
agree.
there's some wrong ways to go
Yes.
about like doing stuff, right? Of
Yes.
like ending your life, right? That's not
Yeah.
just stuff like that is not anything that's detrimental to you and detrimental to your kids and stuff. It's understandable that some people might go and seek out those avenues to try to like drown out the pain or numb themselves. Right. I understand
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. That's all you want to do is be numb from it. But you have to figure out how it looks for you, like what you want your life to be like 10 years from now, and make little steps to get there.
Yeah.
Because it's not an overnight thing. It doesn't go away. You just figure out how to live with it. That's
Talking about all this kind of aftermath and some of the things that happened after, there's a thing called the grief cycle that kind of goes in a circle, and you can kind of ping around it and go in different places. Some of those items in the grief cycle are things like depression, things like bargaining, anger, acceptance,
Denial.
and denial. Did you see any of those stages or those things in that cycle actually like come to life in your situation?
every single one of them.
Can you give us maybe some specific instances of where some of those things showed up?
Yeah. I mean, and what's weird about the grief cycle is like, they say it like in school, we learn like DABDA, denial, anger, bargaining, like it's in this specific order.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not in order.
It is not. It's
like a circle, but then you don't have to go from anger to like this
No.
one. You can go from anger
you
to
can
down
bounce-
here,
go back
here,
and
here, and
forth
then go back to
between
anger and
ones,
here
yeah.
and here.
Yes.
And honestly, I would say that at least my naive understanding of it, it's been 4 months since Sonny's passed away. I honestly think that I will be somewhere in that stage for like
Ever.
the rest of my life.
I would say that's probably
And
accurate.
I will bounce around for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a weird realization is, I guess when you start counseling and you start stuff and you recognize the stages of grief, you think, okay, I'm going to get through this and this and this and this, and then I'll be okay. And then you start going through it and you do the denial. Like for me, I can remember waking up and going, oh, that was just a dream. That was like the worst nightmare. And then looking over at his crib and he wasn't there and going, my sister probably came in and got him and he's probably downstairs having breakfast. Like absolutely refusing to believe that it was true. Driving home from school or work and getting excited to see him and knowing like when I got inside, he was going to give me a big hug and we were going to play. Absolutely refusing to believe it. And then I feel like I didn't go back to denial. Like once I got through denial,
You finally like made that logical connection of like,
yeah. It was a bit of a hard one to get through, but once I got through that one, I didn't go back to it. All the other ones I've dabbled in.
Some of the denial that I see us going back to is like, how could this be our real life? Right? Like,
yeah.
Like, and it's not that you're denying the fact that it's happening, but you're just like, legitimately like, how is this real life right now? Like, how are we sitting here in this podcast room 4 months ago, our daughter died? Like, how is this our real life?
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of denial in that aspect. And when you do describe it that way, then I retract my comment because I definitely do still live with denial in a different sense though. Like I've accepted that it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the really odd things that I'm sorry you guys are going to get to at some point is, okay, so if you get an injury or if you have some sort of trauma happen, something terrible happens.
Yeah.
There's a recovery process and then you're better, right? This tragic, traumatic, horrible thing happened and it's not going to resolve. And so the weird, hard thing for me is I'll be going about my daily life and I'll be having one of those times where I'm just like kind of okay. And then some reality will hit me and I'll go, oh my gosh, I have to live the rest of my life without him.
Yep.
And it's almost like you didn't forget, but you realize like, oh, this isn't going to resolve. Like, I think I almost tricked myself into thinking, okay, it's going to be okay now. And then I have this realization that like, no, there's never going to be a moment where I have him in this life again.
On the injury analogy, the only way that maybe I could make it kind of make sense to me is like, right, if you sprain an ankle like I am right now, like eventually like that gets better and you can run again, right? But from an injury standpoint, it's like getting your arm chopped off and then thinking like, oh, it's going to grow back and I'll be able to use both hands again. But instead, every time it's like, no, remember, like you don't have your arm anymore. For the rest of your life, you don't have the arm. Even
with that, I would say like, you can still adapt. Like you can get a prosthetic. There's still ways you can live a functional life but there's no replacement for losing your child. Like you can replace a limb. It's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely nothing you can do to replace this loss, to fill that void. There's nothing. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. That's a really hard like reality. So I guess I do live with that denial because I do find myself not forgetting, but just often having realizations that like, it's going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
And I hate those moments. They're like a punch to my gut when I have that.
How many years has it been now?
Christmas will be 6.
Wow.
See, like we've talked to other people too who have lost children, like, and it's been like 20 years or 15 years. And I can't even imagine living another 6 years without Zenny.
Yeah.
And like just the other day I was telling Blake, I'm like, how am I supposed to live another 50 plus years? Cause like if I stay in good shape and everything's fine, like I don't get in an accident or whatever, like I could live another 50 plus years. Like I don't want to live another 50 plus years without her.
Camille, I completely understand. And I've had those exact same thoughts and there's no answer for it because it doesn't go away. And the thought of living forever without them is unimaginable. And so I think like what we do as a defense mechanism, or who knows, but I think we just somehow break up life into little bits.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to get through today. I'm going to get through this week. I'm going to plan this trip. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, but it's never, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I have a really hard time looking far into the future.
It's really hard for me right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what next year looks like. I honestly, I don't.
No idea.
No, and I don't like to, because anytime I try and look into the future, it's a future without him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to plan that. I just am kind of in this place that it's like, okay, the future is going to happen. And yes, I'm doing the things I have to do. Like we're both in school for NP. And those are things that we've had in place before this. And I still feel like it's the right path to go on. But I don't want to make plans. I don't want to do anything that's going to be a plan that should have included him. Whatever happens, happens. But I can't consciously make a choice that doesn't include him.
Yeah.
Even family pictures. We used to do family pictures every single year.
Have you done a family picture since?
We did the first ones last year.
Okay.
I would not do them. And the ones I did last year had my dinosaur in it. I couldn't do it. I could not bring myself to take a family picture without my whole family.
Yeah.
Some other people had told us, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, even telling people like, oh, or my family's coming over, but I'm like, but not my whole family. Or just little things like that.
Yeah.
It's really
the little
like, hard
things
to say.
that really just like tear you up. It's very odd because obviously I'm divorced, I'm single, I've dated. When I do date, it's the hardest question for me because they'll say, how many kids do you have? One time I said 2 and I said it and I instantly got sick because
did you feel bad about it?
Horrible. I hated myself. I had to I couldn't even think straight because when I said it because I wasn't trying to make anyone else uncomfortable.
Feel bad,
Because when I say 3, then the next question is how old are they?
Yeah.
And I say 18, 15. And then when I get to Declan, I'm like, half the time I say 5, half the time I say 10 because he would be 10.
Yeah. Do you say that or do you say he would be 10?
I go back and forth. I haven't figured out the right way to do it. Sometimes I say 5, sometimes I say 10, sometimes I say he would have been 10. Sometimes I say I lost him when he was 5. And I still don't know what the right way to do it is. I do know that I can't say 2 because I don't care if it makes someone else uncomfortable at this point. It broke me to say 2 because I don't have 2 children. I have 3 children.
3.
And that was an odd one because dating has been very hard because I have this really hard time thinking, how am I going to have someone in my life? Is that like, if I were to get remarried, I would love to, but you never knew Declan. Yeah. And that's that's one of the best parts of me. That's one of the biggest parts of me. So how do you bring someone into that never knew that? And I know it's possible. And I know the right person would want to know all the things and would let me talk for hours on end about it. But it's just been a very hard thing in my mind to say, you didn't know him. Like you don't
want to test it out with everybody either, right? Like why would you want to like reveal that special sacred part of you?
Yes.
With like, let's say you dated like 10 different guys. That's 10 different people that like you shared that piece of you with, and then they moved on to something else or whatever, or you moved on, whatever it is. Like that's a part of you don't want to just share with everybody.
No, because this is a very intimate situation we're in here. It is hard to talk about this stuff, but it's necessary. Yeah. And we're sharing it with people that understand. When you share it with someone that doesn't understand, it's a whole nother level of vulnerability. Yeah. And it's very hard to do.
Were there any of the other levels or areas of the grief cycle that you kind of could point out?
Sorry, I'll be quicker with them.
No, you're fine.
The anger was very, very, very prominent in my life for a long time.
Anger at the situation, anger at God, anger at even just your whole situation that you were in, being newly divorced, living with your sister. Like, what was the anger about?
There's all of it probably at some point, but initially and for a while, it was all directed at God. Yeah. And I want to say I feel bad about it, but I also don't, because I know that he's a loving, forgiving God, and I know he understands why I felt that way. Yeah. I yelled at him. I screamed at him. And
I would assume multiple times. You told us at the gravesite that you had been there and you were kind of like yelling.
more
Yelling
times
at
than I
him
can
or-
count. Yes. And had so many moments of like, you have put me through so much. Aside from like my son, I lost my sister 2 years earlier in a car accident.
Oh my
My mom
goodness.
had just been diagnosed with ALS. Like we were going through the grieving for the loss we were going to have with her. Like all of these things, my divorce, it was like, you've put me through so much. Like, do you really just not care about me? I don't understand how, if you love me and you like want me to have a good life and you gave me these children, which I know are amazing. So you clearly want me to take care of them. Like, why would you keep putting this on me when I cannot handle anymore? And I would tell him, I said, and I remember I would always say this at the end of it. I would say, I cannot handle anymore. Do not give me anything more. And I would say, and that's not a challenge, because I felt like if I said that, he'd be like, but wait, here's one more thing for you to try and go through. But I could not handle anymore.
Did that make you question everything you had been taught, or at that point that you knew about God?
Yeah.
Just everything with Declan, did it make you just kind of...
Yeah. Which is odd. I grew up LDS my whole life, and I've always believed it. I've gone back and forth, like struggling a little bit, just, like people do.
Most people do, yeah.
And, I believe families are forever. I believe we're going to see him again. And all the, feel good things that people say when you lose someone, like it happens for a reason. You'll see him again. I don't care. You took my baby. Like, we're not okay right now.
Yeah.
You probably had a reason that I don't understand, and maybe I will someday, but I don't care. I want my baby, and there's no plan that you have that's greater than me having my child. And that was very hard for me. Even having faith and doing all the things I'm supposed to do, trying to go to church and pray and rely on like all the things. I just couldn't for a long time understand how that could be part of a greater plan, if you will.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand that, but I've somewhat accepted it. Still don't love it. Still don't agree with it 100%. But
I think sometimes to me, it makes it sometimes even harder having a belief in God and going through something like this, because you have seen other miracles where people have been saved, or like they came back, like they completely died and then came back. Like there's these instances of these things, right? And so you've seen the power of God, and then you're like, what the heck, dude? Like, you didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Or like earlier when you said you didn't get the prompting of like, you should take him in, right? Because if maybe they could have done something, who knows? Maybe not though. Yeah. Like you said, because maybe he probably just would have died at the hospital, and you wanted him to die peacefully at the house instead.
Yeah.
But like we get like the same feeling, like, why did we not get a prompting like that? Like, make sure everything's kosher before you move that boat.
Yeah, it is. It's
And
why us? Why me? Not to throw
The
a pity
victim,
party
yeah.
for yourself, but why? Like, I'm a decent person. I am good, like, to other people, and not patting myself on the back, but I feel like I'm a relatively decent person. So like, why all this stuff? Why take my child? Why put me through this when nobody should have? Why put anybody through it, truthfully? But when you're being sad for yourself and feeling sorry, it's like all about me. Why me?
But knowing that he had the potential, I believe God has the power, and I've seen it, and I know other stories where he's actually stopped it from happening, right? Stopped a death from happening.
Yeah.
But in this case, he didn't.
Yeah.
And in our case, he didn't.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably never know in this life, at least.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where people say it happens for a reason, and you want to punch them in the face.
Love how we thought the same thing.
You like, say that to me one more time, because
I agree though. Sometimes it does, like, it happens for a reason.
But it still sucks.
It's freaking
It just sucks still.
Like, and you don't want to hear that. That's the other thing, is you don't want to hear that, especially coming from somebody that doesn't get it.
Yeah. You could have been
somebody
through.
That's like, I know the scripture super well. Everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. And you're like,
shut up.
Great. That honestly doesn't help me right now.
No.
It doesn't.
And I know people have good intentions, and I know it's coming from a place of love. And I mean, I would just say, from talking to other people who've been through this, like, if anybody that comes across this hasn't experienced a loss and they know somebody that did, just choose your words carefully. Like,
Oh yeah.
don't
most
say
comforting
it.
thing that somebody would say to me is, there are no words.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Because
or
there
like whatever
aren't.
it is, right?
Yes.
This is like, there are no words. There legitimately no words you could say to me that would make anything better.
Yes. And don't try to. Like, don't try to make it better. It's not going to be better.
Yeah.
Try to be supportive and be there for me and let me vent and let me be sad and let me scream and cry. But don't say anything happened for a reason, and don't try and like justify it, because there isn't a justification.
So earlier, like we kind of talked about how, you feel numb like right afterwards. At what point do you feel like you could actually start feeling emotions again? And like, what emotions did you feel?
That was another one of those like parts of the cycle. You have the anger, the bargaining, the depression, the numbness took a long time for me.
Yeah.
I don't remember a good year. My son, he told me, we were in counseling a few weeks ago, and he said to his counselor, she asked him some question, and he goes, I don't remember anything before Declan died. And she goes, that's a problem. We need to work, like,
Really? Wow.
yeah, like he had such a significant trauma response that he doesn't remember about 2 years after and not a lot before. And I would agree. I couldn't tell you between 2017 and 2019. I can tell you random events, but I couldn't tell you any sequence of events. I couldn't tell you when something happened. It was just all these random things happening in life that had to happen, but I was numb to absolutely everything. I remember feeling the anger and the sadness, and lost my mom in the same time. So like dealing with that grief too, and like just not feeling much of anything. I had one boyfriend who kindly told me I was emotionally numb or no, I'm sorry, emotionally dead inside. And I was like, noted. I will work on that. Not going to be today. He's an ex now, but he was right.
Yeah.
I was emotionally dead inside, and I've worked on it, and I feel like it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen by yourself.
Yeah.
You need
the
Yeah.
drop happens overnight, I would say. The drop of that experience of that happening, right? You could have been emotionally available before then,
Yeah.
emotionally there, and then essentially
Just
it got
sink.
sucked everything out of you.
it
And then
instantly.
you have to build all of that back up, and that takes time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're correct. The going numb, instant. The coming back from it, very long period with lots of therapy. And I did therapy immediately because I was like, I got this. I'm going to do everything I can to be okay. Started therapy.
The first therapist you go to, was that like a good match for you?
You had to shop around.
I stopped shopping.
Oh, really?
I didn't find a good match, and I should have kept shopping, but I went back to raising 2 kids and working and not prioritizing the mental health. I'll get through it one day at a time, because I initially did counseling, and then she recommended I do trauma therapy with EMDR.
That's what I did.
And my EMDR experience was not good,
Oh.
but I think it was related to my therapist, and I should have sought a different therapist.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't a comfortable relationship. And talking about it with other people since, I don't feel like he was doing it appropriately. So I should have shopped around. So I intend to do it again. I'm doing TMS therapy right now.
What's
that?
TMS?
So it's this little helmet they put on, and it uses magnetic signals to kind of like help essentially like rewire the synapses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
Did
create
you get
new little
Did you get your
synapses.
brain mapped?
No, I didn't do the mapping. It's
okay.
not that.
It's not the binaural feedback stuff. It's different.
No,
Okay.
it just literally does little pulses, and it just helps create new synapses that can
That's kinda
control and
sounds like
regulate.
the neurogen.
Kind of.
I don't know about that one.
We're doing something similar, but it's just like electrodes that go on your head.
Okay, so maybe it is something very similar.
Yeah.
For me to do this, I had to try counseling and depression meds and some other stuff to like help with anxiety to see if I was a candidate. So I guess it's intended for people who other stuff hasn't worked.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Mm-hmm.
And I've done counseling. I did antidepressants for, I don't know, a little while, like maybe a year and a half. But then didn't do well.
Yeah, it didn't do
on
good
them.
for you.
The anxiety is really what's been hard for me. I really, really,
Did you have
really-
anxiety beforehand?
Very mildly. I had a miscarriage a few years before, or right before I had my son Easton, and I had like a little anxiety right after that.
Sorry
But
to hear about the miscarriage, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But that was like, it was one of those where I went to the hospital because I was like, I'm having a heart attack. And it was just anxiety. And just very mild since then. But since I lost Declan, I mean, it is hard.
It's PTSD.
It's extreme PTSD. And the PTSD triggers the anxiety, and the anxiety triggers the PTSD.
Just
and
a
it's
little
just this
circle.
vicious circle. And I mean, I've done really well as far as like medications. Right afterwards, I got a prescription for Xanax, and I got 10 pills that lasted me a year. So it wasn't like a ton, but coming up on like Christmas every year, I'm kind of like, okay, I need something just in case.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how I'm going to react. I don't know. And it's been different every year leading up to it, every year leading up to his birthday. Every year is different. Just when you think you know what to expect, it's different.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, like, the holidays alone are difficult, but the fact that you lost him on Christmas Day. Well,
Christmas Day.
Christmas
He
Day, yeah.
he died
'Cause it
Christmas
was-
morning.
it was
in the morning.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But so I'll try and have some things in my back pocket just in case. Truly what's like been best for me is trying to exercise. Like one counselor that I did see, she recommended yoga.
Yeah.
And she was just like, if you're in yoga, when you're doing that, you don't have a choice but to be connected. Your mind can't wander. Because that's one of my real struggles. It's my mind just wandering. Like downtime, quiet time, alone time, it wanders to the bad, dark stuff, the sadness, the grief, the questions, the anger. And so doing yoga was a really, really big step in me kind of getting better. Not that I'm better, but helping.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of your coping
to help you cope
mechanisms.
with with what's going on and be able to walk forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exercise in general, I always find that when I'm really consistent with it, I'm much happier and much better able to deal with everything.
Yeah.
But yoga in particular, just that connection with your body, like she was spot on when she said you can't get in your own head when you're doing it because your mind really can't wander much when you're trying to balance or do whatever. And there's always the calming music and someone's always talking and guiding you. And it is something that's really helped me.
Do you do it just on your own in the sense of like watch like a YouTube video, or do you actually go to like a yoga gym or class or something?
I have to go to a yoga class because if I'm at home, I still wander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to have other people around.
Yeah.
Good.
Makes sense.
I'm glad that you were able to figure that out.
Yeah, it's been a good one. I would recommend everybody find something that is like that for them, that they can, even if it's just an hour escape a day, it really does make a difference in your overall mental well-being.
How has Declan's death impacted your whole family life since that point?
My kids have really struggled, which has been really hard as a mom because I mean, they were best friends. They loved him. They adored him. Easton and Declan were best friends. He worshipped that kid. And Easton's definitely just had a really, really hard time. And then the other day he said something to me. He said, I don't know if I remember what Declan sounds like. And it broke my heart because he has a photo album that he looks at all the time, but the sounds like, and I'm like, babe, I am so sorry. I have a million videos. Like we'll sit down and watch them. I have a really hard time watching videos. I will look at pictures all day long, but I skip over videos all the time because I cannot handle. It really, really hurts to hear him. For me, I know what he sounds like. I know everything. I can remember everything vividly, but when I see it there, it's just, I haven't been able to do it yet.
Does it hurt because it's a reminder of what's not there? Or is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't do it. But for the kids, I've had them in counseling. They did it right afterwards too. And then we started them again about 2 years ago. And I'd say they've had more progress in the recent 2 years than they did right afterwards. I think it was good that we did it, but I think that we were very numb and not in the right place
Yeah.
to benefit from it.
Could
mean,
you
I'm
see
sure-
right away that maybe your kids were struggling, or was it like maybe after the first couple times of counseling or whatever, and just kind of they got back into their routine? Did it look like maybe they were doing pretty well, and then after that, you were able to be like, I can tell they're struggling, or was it they were just have been struggling the whole time?
When it first happened, I was actually concerned because I thought they were too okay.
Okay.
I'm like, they're acting completely normal. Like they're okay. Like maybe I don't need to worry about them, but I think they were experiencing what I was experiencing. I was experiencing numbness, denial, all the stages that I wasn't noticing, but I think I thought they were okay. It wasn't until probably a couple years later when I started noticing like patterns of behavior, coping mechanisms, like unhealthy behaviors, unhealthy reactions to things that I was like, okay, we probably need to revisit.
One of the on that point though, going along with all of that, one of the things that at least the trauma or no, the grief counselor that we met with right away was like, always make sure that the kids understand that, because they're going to go through the same guilt, or sorry, the same grief cycle also, and one of those is like guilt of somehow they were involved in like making this thing happen. And so at least in our case, making sure that both of the boys understand that they played no part in like having the accident of Sunny happen.
Yeah.
And
it's easier said than done because even we do it to ourselves too.
Even just trying to say it, sure, you can say one thing, but in order for, in your case, your daughter to fully grasp it, understand it, and believe it is a completely different thing.
Yeah. It's hard with, like, I don't know how you help your kids. You get them help, you be there for them, you're supportive, let them know everything they're feeling is okay.
But you can't take the pain away as a parent.
I feel like that's the
awful.
hardest part because you're feeling the pain of the loss of your child, but you're also dying a little bit inside because your other kids are hurting so bad.
Yeah.
Because, as a parent, you don't want your kids to struggle at all. And this is the hardest struggle they could go through. Well, I mean, not maybe the hardest, but very, very, very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how old are your other kids?
4 and 10.
So your 10-year-old is probably feeling it a little more than your 4-year-old, or no?
It's really hard.
It's really hard to see.
Really hard to tell, honestly. I think it's just hard to tell in general with kids with a lot of things, right?
Yeah, that's how I felt with mine. I didn't know. I'm like, feel something. Like, tell me you're sad. Tell me you're upset. Like, I don't know how you're feeling right now. And they didn't know either.
And kids themselves act in many different ways generally, right? And so you never know if it's like, are you acting this way because the accident was Sunny, or somehow is that involved, or is it just like just the normal emotions and stuff that you feel as a child anyways, and like not even being able to communicate how you like the things that you feel anyways, right? So it's hard to kind of balance and understand, and everything I think I observe is always through the lens of like, is this having to deal with Sunny or is this not? And trying to understand where both of those, because no one's going to be on like a 10 high amazing life their whole life.
Right.
Right. Everyone's always going to fluctuate. You're going to have bad days, right? You just will. And we've had bad days even since Sunny has passed, and we've had good days since Sunny has passed, and all the kids have too. So it's trying to understand like what's causing a good day or what's causing a bad day, and understand if it's tied to the accident or not tied to the accident. Yeah.
And that's a tough one. There's no way to really know. And one of the things I think I struggled with a little bit was trying to decide how much like leniency to have. Like you still want to discipline your kids. You still need to discipline them. They still have to like have rules. But then you also feel like they deserve a little bit more of a break because they're dealing with so much. So I think it's a very fine line to figure out how to move forward with a responsible parenting style while still helping your kids and giving them the grace and the space that they need to
we
heal.
struggle with that for sure.
Yeah, that's been still haven't completely figured it out.
And I think, I don't know, I think it would be harder from your perspective than from our perspective. The reason why I say that is you were a sole parent, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think sometimes her and we have like a checks and balance with each other that we can be like, hey, like you're getting a little too much like intense on this. Like let's, and vice versa. She can be like, Blake, I got this one. Like I'm in a better mental place right now. I can deal with whatever's going on easier than you can. Right. And so if anything, I empathize with that of like, that sucks.
Yeah, it does. I'm not going to lie. And that is something that I wish was different.
Yeah.
Because it's hard being the strong one, the loving one, the disciplinarian, the like all of that things in a normal situation, but it's just a little bit extra hard.
A lot on your
scenario.
plate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's fine. We're happy. We're overall doing really well, but do I wish some things were different? Absolutely. But
first time, how are you doing? You like this?
it's therapeutic.
Okay.
Good.
Honestly, I instantly said yes when you asked me, but then I was a little bit hesitant. Like, what did I just do? Do I want to do this? And I was unsure, but just kind of decided with myself, like, this is the perfect time for me to do it, honestly, because this is the hardest time of the year for me. December 1st, I hate it. Everybody starts their advent calendars, and I'm like, oh, cool. We have a countdown to
his death
when my son died. This is fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah.
It's a really, really tough one, but I feel like talking about it, I don't know what it does. It doesn't make it easier. It helps talking with people that understand. I wish nobody understood, but it's nice to know people understand. And that sounds like it doesn't mean that I wish somebody else felt this way. It's just nice and comforting to know that other people can actually understand how you feel.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I don't know that came out right. But.
I would also say that I think it, and maybe this could be taken the wrong way, but I feel it's nice to be useful in the sense that like sharing your story has the potential to help other people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we're hoping this whole podcast will do, is be able to help other people.
I love it. And I think that's like right when we lost him, we started this called Spreading Declan Smiles. And we just do like on Christmas, every day of December, we do something nice for somebody else with the hashtag Spreading Declan Smiles, just like a little thing to keep his memory
that's
alive.
awesome. I like
and,
that.
Our family and friends do it. And we spend the money we would spend on his Christmas gifts, buying other kids Christmas gifts, and just little things like all you really want is to keep them alive, keep their memory alive, and help others. I think there is a lot of healing and comfort that comes from helping other people through something that you've experienced, whether you're experiencing it freshly or you've been through it a long time ago. We all have different perspectives, and we've all gone through the exact same thing, but we didn't go through it the same way. So hearing what worked for someone else has definitely helped me when someone else has told me what worked or didn't work for them.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to work or not work for me, but it's another avenue I can explore that I may not have thought of.
Or it also creates a little bit of creativity in yourself to be like, oh, like somebody could listen to this and be like, oh, she did yoga. Maybe I'm not so much into yoga, but I could totally be into running while I listen to a podcast, or whatever it is,
something like that.
It creates that level of curiosity and creativity of how can I also adopt something similar.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good point.
Yeah. With Declan's loss, how did that impact some of your family relationships along with maybe some of your friendships that you had?
Family relationships. It probably made family relationships stronger.
Yeah.
Because like my family was so supportive. My ex-husband's family, so like my father-in-law, mother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, sister-in-laws, like there was no separation. There, like we were divorced, but we were all a family for a little while again. Like everybody was just there for me.
Yeah.
As far as my connection with my sister, my dad, my mom, better. We've always had a fantastic relationship, but when you experience something like that with other people, it just, a terrible connection, but it also is
Bonding.
Yes, it's a good
Almost
word
like a
for it.
welding.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like those people, they were there when it happened with me. They know what I went through. They didn't experience the same, but they saw me in that moment and they loved me through it and they supported me and they carried me. And if it wasn't for those people, for my family, I couldn't have made it through. And it's very hard for me to let people help me. So it was a humbling experience for me to have to. I didn't have a choice. I had to count on other people and I had to let them do all the things for me. And it was humbling. It was hard, but it definitely, if it was possible, I love them more.
Yeah,
For it.
definitely.
Because it just, and with my kids, we've also always been very close. We've always been adventurous. We love traveling. We love doing things, just having experiences together. And I was very conscious of the fact that I wanted to continue that with them. Despite our terrible loss, I didn't want that to be the cornerstone of their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted them to still have experiences and have a fun childhood. So if anything, I think it made me go even more in with creating fun memories and experiences with them.
Good.
One thing I'm very, very grateful for is I think right about when Declan was born, I had already decided with my other kids that we weren't doing like big birthday parties anymore. We were just doing experiences. And so we'd been doing that. And I have so many pictures of just fun experiences that we've had. And as I look back at like the regrets and things I wish I did different, I can truly say I know I did everything I could to give him a good life. Like I was there for him. Again, not patting myself on the back. This is just what I've reconciled with myself and like kind of the realizations. Like we had the most amazing 5 years. It was a little bit hard. He had some health issues. But it was the best 5 years of my life.
Yeah.
And making sure that my other kids didn't lose out on the life we had started because of this. Like, does that make any sense?
It totally does.
Yeah, definitely.
So while it's hard to do things and to find the motivation to want to do anything, I feel like I'm glad that I did somehow make myself do the stuff I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
The first Christmas, I refused. I went, nope, I'm not going to a store. I'm not putting up a decoration. I'm not doing anything ever again. And I didn't put up anything. Second year, I put up one picture that he had drawn. We still did like Christmas presents and stuff, but I'm like, I can't. I physically cannot handle doing this. By the third year, we were putting the trees and stuff up again because at that point I had gotten to that realization that like my other kids need this.
Yeah.
And thankfully my family had stepped up on the other times and, they'd come over and put a few things up and decorated and had the kids over to decorate cookies and do all the stuff that I just wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
So my sister did gingerbread houses. And so they'd had the experiences, just not me facilitating them.
Yeah.
So by the third year, I was just like, I only have so many years with my kids. Like we've got to get back to it. And so I'm really glad that I've been able to push the emotions down enough to be able to continue to live and create memories with the people that I do love and do still have here. Because imagine if something were to happen to somebody else and all I was doing was living with the regrets that I hadn't enjoyed that time with them.
Yeah.
That's truly the only thing that gets me through the fact that I've lost him, is knowing that I had absolutely present and enjoyed every moment I had with him. So I have to do that with everybody else. It definitely gives you a new appreciation for relationships and what matters and what's truly important.
Oh yeah. I wish that I could dump all of like that feeling and that like even some of it, I would say maybe I'm going away from it now and like reverting back to like who I was before. But there was so much of me that I was still like, who cares? who cares if we get mud in the house? Who cares if like any of it? Like it honestly, like just like you said, like you were getting ready and you looked in the mirror and you're like, oh, how does it make me look or whatever? And it's like, who cares?
Right.
There's so many things that just don't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And things I thought were like big and important, it's like,
Not important.
it's not important.
Yeah. It's really made me just reevaluate how I live life as a whole. Like I absolutely 100% prioritize my family over everything, over work, over friends, over activities, over anything.
Mm-hmm.
And which is, we were talking earlier, I specifically arranged my work so that I could be there for my kids. I refused a job that wouldn't give me the flexibility I needed. And I know that's not realistic for everybody, but for me, I'm thankful that I was able to find a job that I could make work like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't really care about anything other than the well-being and happiness of my family at this point.
Yeah.
Everything else is second. And thankfully I feel like I've always had that mindset, but it wasn't always something that I consciously prioritized. But now it's not even a decision. It's just, is this going to impact my family positively or negatively?
Yeah.
If it's not positive, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one because life has to go on and you still have responsibilities and you still have to work and you still have to do the things you have to do. But finding a balance and finding a way to keep your family healthy and happy and keep the memory of your baby alive and just doing it all is just a really hard thing to do.
There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you are now on your journey of healing?
I feel like it's the circle we talked about. It's always somewhere. I don't know that I'll ever be fully healed. I'm able to cope. I'm able to get through a day without crying. I'm able to have fun without feeling guilty. That took a long time. Anytime I was happy, I felt guilty. Anytime I was doing something fun, I felt guilty.
And that's a completely normal thing to feel.
Yeah,
I don't
totally
think
normal.
I don't think it's the best thing to feel, but it's completely normal, right?
Right.
And it's hard because you're like, how am I supposed to be having fun right now when Declan's not here with me?
Yes.
How am I able to laugh at this joke or laugh at what, how am I even able to smile right now? And you feel bad about it. We talked about the same thing just yesterday with somebody else on a podcast. And I said, well, I think that thoughts can come from three places. They can come from God. They can come from ourselves. And if you believe in God, then you also believe in the devil. And so thoughts can also come from the devil. And I think that he chooses any instance and looks at anything as an opportunity to try to get you down.
Absolutely.
And so whether that is coming from, and so we know that thought's not coming from God. God wouldn't be like, oh, you're happy right now and make you feel guilty, for being happy. So then there's only the other two. It either comes from yourself, or a more likely scenario for me would be that Satan sees that as an opportunity to try to even take some joy away from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He doesn't. The second you start to feel happy at all is when somebody tries to drag you down, and I believe Satan too.
Yeah.
I've found this little coping mechanism that I do. It doesn't work for me to just not feel things, not be angry or sad or depressed or anxious. So I'll have moments or an evening or something where I'm really just feeling down, and I'll just start to get very discouraged, and then it starts snowballing, and all of a sudden I'm just in that that little realm of despair and just feeling it all. And I'll have to tell myself, okay, Jenni, you can feel this tonight. You can do anything you want tonight. You can be mad. You can be angry. You can throw things. You can, whatever you need to do tonight, do it. But tomorrow you have to get back to real life. And it's worked really well for me to give myself permission to feel all of those things, but to put a little bit of a time limit on it.
Yeah, I really like that.
That is pretty good.
I don't know if it's the right way to do it, but
I think
seems
that's
to
a
be
good,
working a little
I think
bit.
that's a good thing to do.
Right.
You need to be able to feel things.
Yeah, because I find when I I went through a long period where I repressed everything too.
That's not
And that
healthy.
didn't work.
No.
No.
That made it worse, but I truly didn't want to feel it. And I didn't open the files of questions you wanted me to read until today, because I knew once I did, I would get emotional. And I still have a really hard time letting myself get emotional because I never know where it's going to end.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to like intentionally make it happen. So as far as where I'm at in my healing journey, I feel like it's a process you always are going to be going through.
For your whole life.
It's gotten easier. It's gotten more manageable, but there's always something expected or unexpected that will derail you. And I think for myself, the best way that I found to handle is just to let it happen. Accept it. Don't fight it, whether it's good, bad, like let it happen, accept it, let it go through whatever emotions it's going to, and then try and move forward from it.
That's good. And the reason we have that question in here is it's a question we ask everybody. And the reason why we ask everyone that question is because we have people that have been on the podcast that lost their kids 20 years ago, 16 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's so that anyone that's going through this, what we have gone through, can then be like, oh, if they listen to some of these, what does it look like in 20 years? What does it look like in 6 years? That's why it's nice to be like, it does get a little bit easier. But the truth is, it's still really hard. And the truth is, there's still hard days, and there's still days that knock you down. And you're like, oh my gosh, Declan's gone. Like, that's the reality of it. And so it's kind of comforting knowing that, right, in our place, because we're 4 months removed from the accident, from Sonny's death. And so it's comforting for us, and it's honestly healing for us, and a little bit of preparation to understand what it could potentially look like in 6 years, what it could look like in 14 years, what it could look like in 20 years.
Yeah. There's not a realistic expectation that it's going to go away, because it never will.
Yeah.
I think that's really important too, because I did the same thing. I sought out other people, read stories, other things about grief and people who'd experienced it, because I think in my mind, I had this hope that it was someday I was going to wake up and it was just going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I think accepting the reality of that it's not going to helped me heal a little bit.
Yeah.
And realizing that you're not alone, realizing that other people feel that. Because I feel like at some point you're like, am I normal? Is it like, why am I still in so much pain? To recognize that that's normal, I think also helps.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of like coping mechanisms and everything that we have been talking about lately, was there anything that you wish you would have adopted sooner?
I wish I had, I wish I had not worried about other people's feelings sooner and worried more about my own, as far as, like we were talking about, making people feel uncomfortable by talking about him. Because I was very reserved in bringing it up or talking about it, because I didn't want to hurt other people or make other people feel uncomfortable, but I think it really didn't help me at all.
Yeah.
I think I should have just let it all out. And if you didn't like it, then I'm very sorry, but I'm living it.
Yeah. Which is worse.
Yeah. I think that's what it boils down to, is holding it in was not the right way to go.
Yeah.
On any level, whether it's not talking about it, whether it's trying to ignore it, whether it's I was really bad at keeping myself so busy that I didn't have time
to think about it. And
I still do that. I will put way too many things on my plate, and I'll notice it now. I didn't notice it then, but I would be so busy that I wouldn't even have like a free second in the day. And I didn't realize that I was intentionally doing it. But now I'll notice myself start to overschedule, or to take on 12 different projects, or to start a few different things at a time. And I'll be like, I'm trying not to think. I'm trying to repress all this. And I've recognized that that's a thing I do, and it's not healthy. It just makes me more stressed and anxious because I have so many things going on. But I guess in my subconscious, I've determined that feeling the anxiety and stress is better than feeling the pain. And so I think that's just one of the coping mechanisms my brain has come up with, and I'm trying to get over it, because it's definitely not the way to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say don't hold things in is the way that I wish I'd done it different.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here. Thank you
Thank you
for
having me.
yeah,
sacrificing your time to be with us.
No, I think
and
it's
sharing your story.
I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I am certain that it's going to help people. Like I said, I sought out things like this when I was first going through it because you do want to feel like somebody understands, and you want to feel like there's hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jenni, for coming and sharing your story about Declan and how that has impacted your life. If you liked this podcast, please like, share, rate, and review it. Send it maybe to a friend that you might think would be interested in seeing something like this so that we can help get the word out of hope and healing to all those that need it. Remember, shine bright, and we'll see you in the next episode.